Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Let's go over to the CBN newsroom for today's top stories.
Gordon, President Donald Trump is pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza, and talks between Israel and Syria for an end to hostilities are reportedly making progress. All of this comes as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Washington for a meeting with the president. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Iran and Gaza will reportedly be the main topics of discussion when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with President Trump at the White House next Monday for the third time this year. Trump wants to finish the war in Gaza, preferably within days, but Netanyahu is sticking to his requirements on how the war must end: Hamas freeing all the hostages, laying down its weapons, and giving up power in Gaza. So far, Hamas seems unwilling to agree to any of that.
They continue to refuse to lay down their arms or to free the remaining hostages, including the remains of 2 Americans.
Even some Europeans admit Hamas has to go for there to be a real peace in Gaza.
Let me be clear, Hamas must not be part of Gaza's future.
Also in Gaza, the IDF is admitting it has killed civilians trying to get food at the aid sites run by the American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But the IDF says those killings were accidents that happened while trying to control chaotic crowds, and they weren't sure who were civilians and who Hamas terrorists. The State Department points out the IDF is trying to figure out exactly why the killings took place.
The IDF and Israel have announced that they are, of course, investigating certain incidents.
The IDF reports it's made changes around the food distribution sites to help bring down the chaos that has led to violent confrontations. And Israel is blaming the United Nations, which wants to shut down the foundation, for fomenting some of that chaos.
Many in the UN are actively spreading disinformation promoted by Hamas-controlled sources, defaming the GHF's work and providing cover for further attacks.
Meanwhile, Israel is having hopeful and direct and daily contact with Syria, which could lead to an end of hostilities after decades, but would fall short of a full peace agreement. Israel is eager to make that happen.
We have an interest in adding countries such as Syria and Lebanon, our neighbors, to the circle of peace and normalization.
But a sticking point could be the Golan Heights. Syria threatened and terrorized Israel from there for nearly 2 decades. Israel gained control of those biblical heights during the 1967 Six-Day War and has developed it since then. In 2019, President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the strategic plateau.
In any peace agreement, the Golan will remain part of the State of Israel.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here at home, a surprise development in the Idaho college murders case, as defendant Brian Kohberger has agreed to plead guilty to all counts in the brutal killings of 4 University of Idaho students. It was a stunning turn after originally pleading not guilty. This latest plea will spare Kohberger from the death penalty. CBN's Wendy Griffith has that story.
The 30-year-old Kohberger was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary in connection with the 2022 brutal stabbing deaths of roommates Kaylee Consalvis, Madison Mogan, Zaina Kernoodle, and Kernoodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin. Family members of the victims say they learned of the apparent plea deal in a letter from prosecutors saying, "This resolution is our sincere attempt to seek justice for your family."
But why did the prosecution enter into it? Perhaps that they've spoken to other victims' families and thought that they supported it. Perhaps they saw a trial that was going to last for months and decided just to get what they could. But I just think that it's not full justice, because if anyone deserves the death penalty, it's this guy.
The Consalvis family expressed outrage in a Facebook post saying, "We are beyond furious at the state of Idaho. They have failed us. Please give us some time. This was very unexpected." According to the plea deal, Kohberger, who was studying for a PhD in criminology at Washington State University, not far from where the murders took place, will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences on the murder counts, with no possibility of parole, and the maximum penalty of 10 years on the burglary count. This in exchange for the death penalty to be taken off the table. He will also waive his right to appeal. Prior to the plea deal announcement, friends of the victim spoke with ABC.
Does justice lie in a conviction?
I don't think there's going to ever be any justice.
I mean, yeah, we can have justice for the conviction of it, but I don't get to still hang out with Ethan. So
they still don't get to.
They don't have a son. They don't have a daughter anymore. So, is that justice? Probably not.
A motive in the murders is still not known, but some say Kohberger should be required to tell why he took these 4 innocent lives. A change of plea hearing is scheduled on Wednesday. Prosecutors anticipate Kohberger will be sentenced in late July. The plea comes just weeks before Kohberger's trial was set to begin. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
President Trump's big, beautiful bill on tax cuts and spending is facing some big battles in the Senate. Republican leaders are searching for ways to secure support as debate moved on through a tense overnight session. Republicans are divided, with some concerned about the changes to Medicaid, while others want deeper spending cuts. The president himself is warning if the bill does not pass, taxes will increase. Americans recently marked this year's Juneteenth holiday. The celebration across the country commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. While it's only been a federal holiday since 2021, one Virginia playwright has led celebrations for more than 30 years. I sat down with Sherry Bailey for a look at how she uses the arts to help people face America's legacy of slavery without shame or blame.
For nearly 3 decades, Sherry Bailey has walked onto empty theater stages to create new worlds and confront old, painful realities.
I have a play called Southern Girls that I co-wrote with my dear friend Dura Temple Curry, who actually just passed in May. And Southern Girls follows 6 girls, 3 black, 3 white, from the ages of 6 and 7 into their early adulthood.
The Virginia native says her state, and specifically the Hampton Roads area, is central to the story of slavery and freedom in America.
You have in 1619 the arrival of those Africans from Angola at Fort Monroe. That's where they came on land. And then 240-something years later, you have in 1861 the Contraband 3, who were 3 men who escaped from their owner in Norfolk, made their way to Fort Monroe, and asked for asylum. When their owner came to collect his property, he was denied their return, and they were put on federal payroll. And they became the beginning of the end of chattel slavery in America, right there at Fort Monroe. So you have enslavement in 1619 to self-emancipation in 1861.
Her work brings live theater and educational programs to churches, schools, and other organizations, with each production aiming to foster racial healing.
How would you say theater and the creative arts help to tackle difficult issues in our lives?
Well, I think being able to bring people together in a way that is not threatening helps a lot. The play, in fact, this play here that I'm holding, it's called Abolitionist Museum.
This play features 8 historic figures who had an impact on slavery.
And there are wax figures in a museum. The museum curator brings in a Confederate flag, and they debate whether or not to burn that flag. 2009, we're doing the play out in Suffolk, and suddenly a voice says,
Nat Turner killed my family in Southampton County. So before you think about doing away with the Confederate flag, think of what I lost.
And we were like, who said that? And it turned out to be 70-year-old Rose Nichols, who was a descendant of one of the casualties of the Nat Turner insurrection in 1831. But she said it like it happened last week. And we said, ma'am, we're going to finish this play, and then we're going to have that conversation. And it was perhaps one of the best post-show conversations I've ever been a part of, where people who were coming from radically different perspectives were able to have civilized conversation.
When it comes to Juneteenth and slavery, you mentioned minimizing harm and blame. Why is that in particular important?
Well, I mean, if someone is going to blame you for something that you don't have any control over, that's a one-way street to nowhere. And so the idea that someone should be blamed at this point, we're beyond that. And we're beyond shame because, again, we're looking for ways to be able to heal from, the terror and the torture of what slavery was all about. And so it feels very right to say you got to get over that. And that doesn't mean that people don't need to be held accountable.
Do you feel like there's an effort to rewrite history when it comes to slavery?
Rewrite it, suppress it, and change it, all of that. And that, again, becomes a reason why it's so important to do the work.
Bailey and Juneteenth VA hope to continue the work for as long as possible.